Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and today I'll be talking about Mississippi Burning. Released in 1988, Mississippi Burning is an American crime thriller film directed by Alan Parker and written by Chris Garolmo. It is loosely based on the 1964 investigation into the deaths of James Chaney, Michael Schwerner, and Andrew Goodman by the Ku Klux Klan. And the true story with this is, in the early 60s, these three civil rights workers, more importantly, these three kids were sent into the heart of the Deep South with nothing but pamphlets and good intentions. And eventually they were arrested by the police, the local police, on false charges, and then released into the hands of the Klan, as it were, where they were ultimately murdered in a very brutal fashion. Two of them were shot, and then the other one was buried alive, I believe. Or two of them were shot to death, and then the other one was shot and buried alive. The movie doesn't go too hard into showing the actual murder, which I don't think it had to get its point across. This is a disturbing movie, not an extreme movie, so don't expect like heavy hands of gore or like anything like that, but like the content is still very uncompromising and dark, even more so that this is a true story. I said it's loosely based on a true story because, a couple names and shit have been changed around. Like, the actual case happened in Neshoboa County, Mississippi, whereas in the movie it takes place in the fictional Jessup County, Mississippi. But I mean, I think these changes are just trivial and they don't actually take away from the story. There was one change, though, that I found was pretty fucking big and indicative of the grand conspiracy that the FBI later gets onto toward the midpoint of the movie. But essentially, when the FBI sends two agents in, they get no help from any of the locals. They get no help really from the police department, and even the local branch of the Ku Klux Klan starts making their presence more aware. Like, I mean, they even attack the FBI agents at one point with a burning cross and a shotgun blast through the window. This in turn results the FBI into calling in more agents to, get answers, check the area, try to find the three kids. But the swamps are fucking huge. They can't find it with just a handful of agents. So this results in them calling in Navy guardsmen to come and check the swamp. Now, in the movie, they check the swamp and all they find is the car and a couple like trinkets that were in the car, like watches, beer cans, and a Coke bottle. But what actually happened in the real case is when the Navy men searched the swamp, they found the bodies of 8 more murder victims, including college student civil rights workers Henry Hezekiah D. and Charles Eddie Moore, who had disappeared 1 month before Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner. As indicated in the film, the method of murder used by the Klan and law enforcement was well organized, and this had been done before. So this wasn't the first murder this county had partaken in and covered up. It's just really dark, fucked up shit, and I don't think this is specifically an America problem. Like, now, I don't think the Klan's roaming around in pickup trucks lynching people nowadays, or if they are, they're not doing it as much as they used to. But I think racial genocide and shit is a very human issue. I think this is something that all forms of humanity has engaged in, and it's like a really maybe it's like the thinker or the stoner in me just pontificating on this, but like it just always makes me wonder, and it kind of confuses me, like why do humans have this inherent need to like wipe out someone they see as different of them? Like, this goes back beyond fucking religion and shit. This is like tribalism almost, and it's just unfortunate to think that we see ourselves as so advanced and so like beyond animals and shit, but like we're still doing this arcane, fucked up, like messed up shit. I mean, sure, in this movie it's just a bunch of fucking inbred cousin fuckers doing it, but like look across like the world, there's some fucking intelligent people doing this fucking horrible shit too. It's a movie that makes you think. This movie does not it doesn't like really, it's not like brain rot. It's not just like a fucking shit show. Like, it's not like an extreme movie. And I was having a conversation about this the other day with the difference between an extreme movie and a disturbing movie. This is not an extreme movie. This isn't just violence for the sake of violence. This isn't just upsetting shit for the sake of being controversial. This is a disturbing movie. This is disturbing because it makes you think about, like human nature. This makes you think about like society. This lingers with you for days. I mean, I watched this movie like 2 days ago and I'm still thinking about it as if I just finished it. It's very powerful shit, and I think it helps that it was directed by Alan Parker, because the guy is an expert filmmaker. I mean, some of my favorite movies by him are directed by him, or shit like this, Midnight Express, Angel Heart, Pink Floyd, The Wall. The guy is a master craftsman when it comes to making movies, and this is no exception. I mean, I'm pretty sure this actually won an Oscar for Best Cinematography. And I'm pretty sure Alan Parker was nominated for Best Director, and it makes sense. This was a very well put together, thought-provoking movie, very disturbing. But at the same time, don't let the title of disturbing deter you. If you're very into history, if if you can stomach the nastiness of our past, I feel like you can sit through this. It's got an ensemble cast. It's well acted. It's well made. So it's not like you're watching schlock. It's not like you feel dirty watching it. You know what I mean? You can tell there was a lot of care put into it. However, when the movie did come out, it caused some criticism by activists involved in the civil rights movement and the families of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner for its fictionalization of events. I can see how they would be upset about it because, a movie's being made of the deaths of their children. But unfortunately, this is American history. This is, North American history. This is something we need to discuss. And I hate to sound like a prick here, but it's public domain. It's a true story. It's just as much open as the Zodiac case or anything else like that. You know what I mean? So I have no problem with movies like this being made. I mean, however, my opinion is kind of a 50-50. I mean, as a viewer, I have no problem with stuff being like this being made, but it has to be made well. Like, it has to be a good thing. It can't be made like as shameless exploitation, And y'all who know me, I'm a guy who likes shameless exploitation, but with subject matter like this, it's got to be handled with care, and it can't just be haphazardly put together. It can't just be like Goodbye Uncle Tom or any of those Mondo, like Africa movies. Like, those movies, while they have their own place in controversy and disturbing, those are just not really well made. They're kind of just controversy for the sake of shock. This had a point and a story to tell, and I highly recommend you check it out. Now, I've been going on for a minute here about philosophy and race and human nature, so let's talk about the fucking movie, all right? So, directed by Alan Parker, written by Chris Garolmo, produced by Frederick Zolo and Robert F. Colesbury, starring Gene Hackman, William Dafoe, R. Lee Ermey, Brad Dourif, Frances McDormand, Michael Rooker, and a nice cameo by Tobin Bell. So, we get Henry Lee Lucas, well, the fictionalized version of Henry Lee Lucas, Chucky, Jigsaw, and Sheriff Hoyt, all in this fucking movie. Oh, and I guess actually, I guess Nosferatu, because William Dafoe did play him. Great fucking cast in this movie. Like, every few scenes, the first time I ever saw this movie, I think I was in high school or something. Every few scenes, I'd be like, oh shit, that's so and so. Oh shit, that's so and so. And it was crazy. This is just a very well stacked, all rounded cast, and great job, whoever the casting director was, for getting that together. Cinematography by Peter Bizu, edited by Gerald Hambling, music by Trevor Jones, and distributed by Orion Pictures. Released on December 2nd, 1988 in Washington, D.C., and released December 9th, 1988 in the entirety of the United States, with a running time of 128 minutes and a budget of $15 million, with a box office return of $34.6 million. So, nice chunk of change made from this movie. It did win an Oscar, and it was nominated for a couple more. Well put together movie. I think this is one of Alan Parker's best. A lot of people I've seen on Reddit consider this a horror movie, and rightfully so. This is pretty horrific shit. Again, pulling back to me saying this is based on a true story. I mean, like, I don't know how many times I can bring that up. You watch this movie and you think, like, on one end it's like, yeah, it's based on a true story, and then you start sinking in like how close to reality this is and how close the facts were. I mean, a lot of people I've seen online trying to say that this is like propaganda, like it tries to like make the feds look good, but I don't know. I think it was just I don't care for all that like fucking politicalized fucking bullshit. In terms of it being a movie and telling a story, I think it was good. There's an interesting dynamic though that comes up with the two main FBI agents. So you have Alan Ward, who's played by Willem Dafoe, and you have Rupert Anderson, who's played by Gene Hackman. Willem Dafoe is more like he outranks Rupert or Gene Hackman's character, but he's younger than him, and he kind of symbolizes the new America, the new civil rights movement, and the kind of arrogance that comes with the youngness. You know what I mean? Whereas Gene Hackman, he comes off as a good old boy. You know what I mean? Like an old school, like, small town cop. And it's interesting because for the first, I'd say fourth of the movie, you kind of don't know where Gene Hackman sits on the fence. You're like, Is this guy actually think that like this was a murder, or is he just gonna fucking, because he has this nostalgia about small southern towns, that's where he grew up, so you think he might just be a hindrance to Willem Dafoe. But then you start realizing, while he starts, opening up about himself and telling stories, like specifically the story about his dad, when he tells Willem Dafoe the story about his father, that's when I realized the first time watching it, I'm like, no, he's not on the wrong side. He is on the same side as Willem Dafoe. He wants to find these kids. He's just, he doesn't like the labels. He doesn't see it as 3 civil rights workers that went missing and ended up dead. He sees it as 3 kids that ended up dead. And his criticism of the civil rights movement, I think, the older I get, the more poignant and the more I agree with him on it. Like, who the fuck were these adults sending these 3 kids into the worst possible place in America at that time, with not even a gun to defend themselves? I'm not saying these kids should have shot at these fucking cops, but they had no sense of defense. They sent them literally into the fucking hornet's nest. And I think to some degree, I'm probably going to catch some flack for saying this, but I think the civil rights movement knew what they were doing, and they tried to martyrize these kids. And in some levels they did. It's just, it's weird. Personal politics and society is a very fucking dirty game. I think both sides are guilty of doing very underhanded tactics. Obviously the villains in this movie are the Klan. When of the Klan have ever not been the villain. They are the villains. They are inbred fucking retard dumbass hicks who live in the fucking swamps and fuck their cousins. Yeah, but at the same time, these civil rights adults, these fucking people on their ivory towers in fucking Chicago and New York, in cities where, it was bad, but they had homes and shit. They're sending these people into the fucking swamps where they're basically going to get deliverance, and they know it. And it makes you wonder, why didn't they go down? Why didn't they send bodyguards down? It kind of infuriated me. The more I watch this movie, it makes me just angry at everybody involved. I'm angry at the small town for being so ass backward and, killing children basically. And I'm fucking mad at these fucking handlers and these altruistic people who basically sent these kids into their death. This movie evokes a lot of emotions, and I believe it is, in my opinion, it's what the kids would refer to as a very based movie. It doesn't really bullshit. My only real criticism of this fucking movie is a couple of the scenes that get a little bit more dramatic and vile. I think they cut it short. I think they could have had no music. It would have been more effective if they had no music, or if they had a bleak ambient instrumental score. Now, what I mean is, a lot of the times when these brutal acts of violence happen in the movie, like the firebombing, or when the preachers the preacher gets lynched in front of his kid, like, you have these gospel songs playing, and I feel like that was the only thing I would have complained about back in the day. Is like, I don't understand why whenever these kind of movies about racism or violence or shit get made, they had to have these fucking whack ass gospel soundtracks happening as almost like a way to incite a tearjerk out of people. I feel like it's a cheap tactic to get people to cry. I feel like the scenes that I'm speaking of would have been way more effective if the music had not been there, or if it had been ambient noise, because the images speak 1,000 words. You don't need to have the music on top of it. You could have just had the scene play out with just the yelling and the sound of the rope going around the tree, and I feel like it would have been more disturbing, more brutal, and it would have been more effective. Whereas I kind of found it took me out of the movie. Every time I rewatch this movie, I love this movie, by the way, but every time I rewatch this movie, I find that the gospel shit it takes me out of it. I think it's like a cheap fucking thing to do, but hey, to each their own. I can't make a movie this fucking good, so I mean, it's a very surface level complaint. Other than that, I think everyone put it in their all. I mean, Gene Hackman decided that he would never make a violent movie after seeing a brief clip from this movie, albeit in his eyes later the clip was taken out of context, but this stance prevented him from accepting the job as director for Silence of the Lambs, and it almost cost him the role as the sheriff in Unforgiven. But Clint Eastwood basically clicked him back into reality and told him, nah, man, you got to do this movie. But this movie had an effect on some of the actors, and I couldn't imagine like filming some of these scenes. I mean, like, Michael Rooker playing the Klansman, or Brad Dourif playing a Klansman. I couldn't imagine what it would feel like having to like hurl racial epithets at people and like act like a hateful monster. I mean, it's all acting, but it must take a toll on you at some point, you know what I mean? And it's just brutal. And going on about the performances, the people who play the good old boys and the Klansmen, they got some good actors to play some evil motherfuckers, man. Like R. Lee Ermey, great. as always. He kind of plays the same character and everything, but he's always great to see. Michael Rooker, though, he's just, man, this guy was a fucking unhinged animal. I wanted to see this guy get fucking dropped the second he made that line about fucking choking out cats and shit. I'm like, you son of a bitch, bro. But he, again, made me hate him, so he did his job great. Fucking Brad Dourif, though, he stole the show. I was really high when I watched this a couple days ago, and I thought to myself, you know, if you ever watch a movie with Brad Dourif pre-Chucky or like just slightly after the first Child's Play, you can tell he had the laugh going. Like in Blue Velvet, you can hear the Chucky laugh, right? But in this movie, this came out around the same time as Child's Play. I feel like Alan Parker told him, like, look, I know the laugh's iconic and it might be a mannerism of yours or a tick, but you can't do it. And there's a specific scene in the movie, I think it's right when Brad Dourif, or his character, Sheriff Clinton Pell, gets released from the first interview he gets put in. You can tell he's like smirking and shit, and he tries to hold back a laugh, and you can ever so slightly hear the Chucky laugh. And I'm like, bro, this guy's dying not to do the Chucky laugh. It almost reminds me of whenever you watch a Terrence Howard movie, and you can see this guy fighting for his life not to say "mine" after every word. Fucking hilarious. But he was great in this movie. However, a side note, there's a scene when Gene Hackman, when he finally goes fucking hardcore FBI agent, like fucking, I'm talking like phone book and a baseball bat to the ribs level investigation. He goes into a barber shop and slaps the living shit out of Brad Dourif, and he leaves him basically spinning in a barber's chair. And I don't know, it was just the way it was filmed. I think just seeing this guy finally get an ass kicking after being a piece of shit the whole movie, I don't know, it was a perfect storm of righteousness, because after he got slapped silly like that and he was spinning in the chair, I was just fucking laughing so hard. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a retard. I don't fucking know, but that shit was funny as fuck. But you know, a great movie. My favorite part is when Willem Dafoe and Gene Hackman finally, you know, stop butting heads, and they're like, you know what, we're gonna take these guys out. We're gonna do it the dirty way. We're gonna fucking go to their level, because these fuckers are from the sewers. And what essentially happens is Willem Dafoe, because he's very by the book and very morally righteous and shit. He lets Rupert, do his way, but reluctantly so. Every so often he tries to intervene. Where this is very evident is what happens is in one great scene, the mayor, played by Arlie Ermy, is kidnapped in the middle of the night, and he wakes up in his shack. And when they pull the hood off him, he's sitting across the table from this black dude. And the black dude basically tells him a story about how not that far away from where they are right now, this kid named Homer, who was just taking his girlfriend home, was kidnapped by like 3 or 4 white boys. And they took him to a cabin, not like the one they're sitting in right now, like not so different from it. And they basically cut off his fucking balls with a razor blade. And while he's telling this guy story to Arlie Ermy, he's pulling out a razor blade and like puts it right to his nuts. And he basically gets the answers out of him. It was fucking brutal, man. Like, I'd say like any dude sitting there was probably holding their sack thinking like, holy shit, bro. Like, I couldn't imagine. Like, it was painful, but a great fucking, I mean, there was another sick scene too when fucking Tobin Bell, he's playing this guy named Agent Stokes, fucking Jigsaw. He does some crazy interrogation shit where like this cross-eyed motherfucker's working at like a sewing factory for his like brother-in-law or whatever the fuck, and he's like, come on, let's go, how you got change for a 20? And guy puts his hand in the register and he slams the door in his thumb, and he's like, yo, if you don't come with me, I'm gonna break your fucking thumb off. And yeah, I love seeing this fucking smug ass inbred town finally just get it, bro. Like, they're getting the treatment they were putting these black folk through, man. Like, there's a part when they get the cross-eyed guy after he like fucking gets almost lynched by his own boys for ratting on them, and they drop him off in the black neighborhood, and he's like looking around like, oh no, they're gonna fucking kill me. And like, rightfully so, man. Like, you've been blowing up these people's houses and giving them shit for how long, bro? I wouldn't blame them if they ripped you apart with their bare fucking hands. Like, but yeah, no, again, as you can tell with this podcast, this movie just evokes a lot of emotion. What really cheesed me is when they showed the sentences for like a lot of these fucking guys. The bracket of years that these guys got for these murders of these kids was between 3 to 10 years in prison, and the Sheriff Ray Stuckey, he got fucking acquitted. So these guys really had no punishment for murder. It's just fucked, man. Like, it's actually so fucked up and so like fucking sad, man. It's tragic. Like, people are fucking pieces of shit. Like, and this is a prime example of how like, if you're far enough away from, like, the rest of society, you can kind of just get away with doing horrible shit and bury it in the swamps. People are interesting creatures of fucked up habit in this case, and it was just a very, very difficult movie, but I think it's a movie everyone should watch. I've seen on reviews people refer to this as like a movie they should show in classes, and I'm pretty sure in grade 10 they showed us this movie in fucking history class. And it's weird because no one really paid attention to it. I mean, like, they showed us some good movies in high school. From what I remember about high school, when I did go to classes, like the good classes, they would show us some good movies. And, a lot of these things are movies I have in my collection now. And it's a shame that, you don't see more people talking about this, or more people from my generation at least talking about how crazy this movie was, or how influential it was in our understanding of history. And, it's wild. It's a really good movie. I think all the criticism about it is because people say it's like, oh, it's for white liberal people to absolve their guilt. I'm like, and it's propaganda. I'm like, no, man. I think it's just a good movie that tells a story of something that happened. Like, yeah, sure, were the FBI as cooperative as they're portrayed in the movie? Maybe this group of agents were. Like, was the whole agency? No, there's proof that they were fucking rabble rousers on both sides, left and right. But like, in this case, or at least in this fictionalized case, these cops or these feds gave a fuck. And I mean, they found the bodies. And at the end of the day, I think that's what's important, is these people got a proper fucking Christian burial, and their families got to see them. They weren't, fucking left in a fucking ditch somewhere. And as little as the sentence was, these fuckers fucking got sent to jail. And I hope they all got cornholed for it, because piece of shit behavior. But yeah, this movie, it's very, very good. I highly recommend it to everyone. I'd probably, if I were to rate this on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd probably have to give it a 10. I mean, it sounds like very very cliche. Oh, it's an Oscar movie, it's giving it a 10. But like, no, honestly, like, fine. You know what? If I'm going to be more realistic, I'll give it a 9.5. And the 0.5 is because the musical score is kind of shit sometimes. Other than that, acting is great, casting is great, cinematography is great, fucking story very unfortunate, but a great adaptation of a very unfortunate true story. Yeah, this is in a list of, like, if there was a top 50 disturbing movies, this is up there. This is one of those ones that you gotta see. It's just insane. It's insane, and it's even more fucked up that it actually happened. If you want to expand your horizons and watch disturbing movies but not get bombarded by a bunch of images of fucking like scat, rape, or gore, I'd say go with a movie like this. There's a lot of great disturbing movies that don't necessarily go over the top. And harkening back to what I was mentioning earlier, there's a vast distinction between extreme and disturbing movies. This is a disturbing movie, but it's a tough movie, but it's something that I find most people interested in history can sit through. This is Mississippi Burning, and if you are interested, the FBI file case is actually called Mississippi Burning, abbreviated to MI Burn. Look into that. American history, North American history, very fucked up, but also very interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll come back to you guys with maybe a horror movie, maybe something a little different, or maybe another disturbing movie on the levels of this if you guys want to see more true crime. But yeah, I hope you guys, I don't know, enjoy is a weird word, but I guess hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.